Welcome, Mental Growth Network. This is our new podcast, and this podcast is about the burnout condition. Today, I invited my very good friend, Taahirah Chothia, and she will talk about this topic. Hi, Taahirah.
Hi.
Taahirah is a learning support therapist that specializes in executive functioning skill development. She has a background in psychology and anthropology and worked in the field of learning support for past 15 years. Welcome.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to ask you, what is this burnout condition, what we talk about, and how are you related to it? Why are we talking about this topic today?
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me and for all the viewers and listeners that are listening in on this podcast. So, burnout is defined as a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, and it's generally caused by prolonged and excessive stress. It can relate to work, it can relate to other functions like caregiving or anything that causes a lot of physical and emotional stress. Burnout is related to me and my work because generally when people get burnt out, they find it very difficult to to be productive. They find it very difficult to be motivated and to carry on the tasks that they are doing. And no matter what they try, no matter how much they are pushing, they still can't get back to that level of feeling safe, secure, regulated, and their brain functions in terms of how they're approaching their work, their relationships, and their everyday life is overall impacted by the state and feeling of burnout.
And as a learning expert, how does it affect the learning abilities of a person?
Oh, that's a great question. So when we learn, I don't think a lot of people realize the complexities that goes on in our brain when we learn. We generally have to be focused and pay attention to something that we're learning. So that is sustaining attention to what you are learning. You then have to retain that information that would go into your short-term memory or your working memory and then relate it to your long-term memory. You then have to be able to reproduce the things that you know. And when you are applying the things that you know out of context from the time you are learning it, you have to be able to retrieve the things that you have learned and actually utilize it in the context that is required. So there's a lot of complexities that goes on in the experience of the mind, and how we learn is affected by our five senses because we get information through our five senses. So when you are sick or when you have any disorder or when your brain is not functioning very well, it impacts everything that you are doing. And it also has an impact on how you feel in relation to people around you. So you will be impacted by the output of your work, plus by the notion of how you feel safe with people around you.
Mm. Interesting. So, in general, we can say that learning is very complicated process, yes, and to really be successful in it, you need to be in healthy condition as maximum as possible. And if we talk about this environment that we live in, where you need to learn all the time, to be adaptive all the time, otherwise you sometimes even can't survive, this makes this skill of controlling your burnout so much crucial. I want to
Mhm.
ask you one more question about the nature of burnout because it's a little bit not clear for some of our listeners, maybe. What makes burnout fundamentally different from depression or anxiety?
Okay. So just to just to have as a general notice, everyone experiences conditions and symptoms in a different way. So if you have two people that have burnout, it doesn't mean that they are going to experience burnout in the same way. Everyone's brain is different and everyone's story is different. Generally, when you have burnout, it's context related to something specific based on long-term stress or exposure to work or caregiving that feels like whatever you are doing, there's no end to it. The amount of pressure that it's putting you on, it's affecting your sleep, it's affecting your eating. It has a huge impact on how you are functioning on an everyday basis. And then your body tends to, or your mind tends to respond to three things in relation to burnout. You are extremely emotionally exhausted. So you feel very overwhelmed or very underwhelmed or very numb. However, emotional exhaustion might look for you, you would feel the experience of emotional exhaustion. You tend to depersonalize everything. So you become very cynical, you become very detached, you become very apathetic. And that is very difficult. Apathy is very different to empathy. Apathy is when you lose care of everything. Empathy is when you can relate to someone else's emotions. So you have emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, apathy, and then a reduced feeling of personal accomplishments or an output. And it's always context related. So that is what burnout would be. When you're looking at depression, depression and burnout could go hand in hand, but depression is a chemical disorder that comes into place sometimes as a result from external factors of what you go through or internal dysregulations that you go through. Sometimes depression can be related to genetic aspects of things that you are experiencing. And sometimes it is something related to your past or something based on trauma. So depression is not always context specific based on work that is or caregiving that is having you experience that feeling of being overwhelmed. Nothing is ever coming to an end. There's too much stress, which leads you to having those three particular qualities. So you can have depression and burnout together, but they are fundamentally two separate things.
And anxiety.
Anxiety is very interesting, Yi. A lot of people, especially when you're looking at the amount of information we are being fed with regards to mental health and mental health awareness, and anxiety is a theme that comes up a lot. And when people speak about anxiety, they often speak about it in the most negative way. Oh, it's the worst thing to have anxiety. Anxiety is what causes long-term stress, and it's a horrible thing to feel that way. All of those things are true. But anxiety is a normal human physiological response that happens to us when we have to do the fight, freeze, fawn, or flight response. So generally, as mammals, when we face a particular threat, your body goes into certain types of mode where you will have adrenaline being pumped to the different types of organs. You will have an increased blood flow to the legs and to the lungs so that you can run. You will have cortisol, which will have you have wider eyes and acute level of awareness so you can make quick decisions. And that's supposed to help you when you are very stressed in a short burst of time and you need to get back to safety because you could almost die or you are in danger. So anxiety is a normal, healthy stress response that we have when we are facing something that is life-threatening. However, how anxiety has become in the current life that we are living in is that instead of switching it off when you reach a point of safety and regulation and calmness, we don't have the off button when it comes to anxiety. And then the same hormones and the same chemicals that are really super healthy and good for our body when we are anxious becomes extremely damaging to our cell and to our brain when we are exposed to it over long periods of time, specifically cortisol, certain types of hormones. And then if you have like disruptions within your breathing patterns, you have that numb feeling in your hands and your feet, you have a cold feeling in the pit of your stomach, and it's not something you can switch off, but it's a prolonged state of feeling. The nervous system and the mental system, specifically looking at the processes of learning, gets affected by that system not being able to switch off. But anxiety can happen to people who have to face certain types of pressure and they don't have good regulation tools in place, but it doesn't mean that if you're anxious, you are depressed or you have burnout. So these three things can exist as comorbid disorders or challenges, if you wish to call it that, within one person, but they're not always mutually inclusive. So if you have burnout, it doesn't always mean you're going to have anxiety and you're going to be in depression. They are three separate things. I hope I made that clear.
Yes, thank you. And talking about burnout, how can we understand that we are in this condition, or maybe that the burnout condition is just starting? What will help us, to go deeper inside it? But at some point, when you already start to feeling that this burnout is coming, you need to do something. Like how to feel it is question number one, and then what to do if you start to feeling it. How can you decrease the burnout condition?
Yeah, I think that's different for everybody, but it always comes down to mindfulness. Many people don't know how to practice mindfulness and how to be aware. What is my thinking patterns right now? What is my emotional responses? What am I eating like? What am I sleeping like? What am I dreaming? What am I dreaming or thinking about? There is a condition that happens when you are extremely anxious sometimes. It's called ruminating. Have you heard of ruminating? So ruminating actually comes from like a term of what a cow does. A cow, after it's eaten a lot of grass, lays down on the grass and it ruminates the grass that it has eaten, and it just chews and chews and chews on it nonstop. So it's the same kind of concept where with rumination, instead of obviously bringing up grass, we constantly have certain thoughts. And no matter how many times we've come up with a problem, solution, idea of it, we can't stop the cycle of thinking. The thoughts continue nonstop, and they don't have a stream of being able to compartmentalize it or to ease things down. So generally, when you have ruminating thoughts and your sleep is being affected and your eating has been affected and your exercise has been affected, and you can see that no matter how many strategies I'm putting into place, I'm constantly tired and I'm always moody. I'm never myself. I'm never in the best mood of myself. And you can identify that how I'm feeling right now is different to how I'm feeling when I'm good. And you can also relate the fact that the reason why I'm feeling like this is because of this overwhelming, nonstop pressure that is happening to me at work. And what is important to understand with burnout is that two people will experience pressure in completely different ways. One person might look at the workload of what somebody is given and say, I can do that in an hour. Why are you complaining about this? This is so easy. But for somebody else, maybe they're going through certain things. Maybe they might be neurodiverse and they need different types of structures and tools. Depending on who they are and what they are going through, they might experience the expectation of that output with a lack of support and understanding in a completely different way to another person. And what happens with adults, generally you hear burnout in adults. Sometimes it is evident in children that go to school, especially children that have high sensitivity to sensory overload and just too much of information. If they get too much exposure to school without the correct strategies in place, they could also experience burnout from going to school. But generally it happens when you are an adult and a child will ask for help. A child will be observed by the teachers, by the support staff, by the parent. And because there's that power dynamic of taking care of a child and having the child be what they are, there tends to be a lot of almost immediate interventions and support when you can identify my child is not doing too well, something must change. I will work with the school, I will work with the counselor. We have to arrange something so that there's less pressure put on my child. But when we are an adult and we have work to do, very seldomly would an adult ask for help or support because often it is seen as being incompetent or being lazy. And then there is that genuine fear that if I come out and ask for help and something that maybe other people can do, I'm not going to get my bonuses, or maybe I'll get fired. Or maybe my performance evaluation will show poor and I won't be allowed to get a promotion. So the impact that people would have for asking for the level of support that they require in their work environment tends to, in and of itself, add pressure to not asking for what to do when it comes up to strategy. A lot of the times when it's people within corporations, burnout is not only about awareness of a state of mind and self, but it's also about working with a strategy with your employer or with the person you are working with to come up with a different way to approach the workload and work functions that you have that makes it manageable and doable for where you are at. But also, I would say, more importantly than anything, when you start to identify that these things are things you are experiencing and feeling, you can put these strategies into place and ask for support. But the most important thing is for you to actually step back and get regulated and have rest. Focus on your sleep, focus on calming down the nervous system. There's some beautiful work known with the polyvagal nerve, which is a nerve that runs throughout your body. So there's a lot of work you can do with calming down the nervous system and using the body to do that. And stopping what you are doing that's making you feel that way without having it on your mind that when I'm taking a break and when I'm resting, I'm going to lose my job or my work is going to be compromised. So finding a way to identify it before it happens, determining a strategy with your employer or employees, and then having a break period where you can step back and recover before you actually execute and implement the strategies that you've decided.
So first of all, the most important step is to start rest, to step back, yes, and to try to feel what can cause you this condition. Yes, what is your condition right now? This already will help you to regulate the process. And here I want to ask you one question related to this condition when you feel it. Burnout is a sign of emotional exhaustion, or it is a deeper crisis of a meaning? What can it be for a person?
Can you say that again for me? It's a sign of
Emotional
exhaustion.
exhaustion, or like some deep crisis of a meaning of his understanding his path, his life. And then burnout, the symbol is like, very often people say like that I feel I'm not doing the right thing, I'm not in the right flow. Yeah, so this is meaning that. Or just people so much exhausted that they start to associate the things that they do with this. Is there any difference between that, or how will you compare?
I think everybody is different, right? So sometimes when somebody has burnout, maybe for some people, to reach that point where you're feeling utterly exhausted, you have apathy, you're not producing an output. So those three key functions, your window of tolerance before everything crashes might be 1 month. It might be a few weeks. For some people, that window could be a few months before they crash. So depending on what that window looks like, everybody's experience of exhaustion and burnout is going to feel different. But it is a very normal human response when you feel like your back is against the wall and you can't live your life that makes you feel regulated and happy, that you start questioning the point of your existence. Why am I doing this? Why do I put myself through this? How am I in this position? Why don't I have other options? Why don't I have people supporting me? Why don't people like me? And nothing is ever separated when it comes to the entirety of who you are. Every single person is the result of everything that makes up the experience of who they are. And there's a lot of things we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose the mind we have, the skin color we have, our sexual orientation. We don't get to choose our gender. We don't get to choose so many components of our environment. And yet, these things that happen to us because of what is fated to us allows us to have certain experiences of the world that is carried with us throughout our life. And so when you are at the point of exhaustion, you are extremely vulnerable because the entire system starts to collapse. Your mind, your body, your feeling of everything under control starts to collapse. And when you are that vulnerable, generally, your greatest points of insecurity comes to the surface. Now, maybe for some people, it might be a new experience for them to see the clarity of what that insecurity looks like when you feel like you don't have any choice. And that clarity is observed by them for the first time. But it doesn't mean that it didn't exist there. It just means that they just had that point of awareness. And depending on how people are, some people are reflective and they think a lot about many things. And some people are not reflective at all, and they just want to get over things and move forward. So everybody experiences burnout and any kind of mental health conditions in a different way. And it doesn't matter what the experience you're having is. The most important thing is when you identify the form of dysregulation that you are experiencing. Sometimes you can do things that helps you on a personal basis, like making different choices, asking for support. Sometimes you have to get support from counsel of your relationships around you. And sometimes you are at a brink of a point where you need to get professional help. And it's always good if people, despite the experiences that they are having of what is known to be burnout, if they can identify what kind of help that they need to get that particular help they need.
So we can say that burnout in general make you more sensitive, and if you have some insecurities, they come out, and depending what insecurity is about, for example, it can be related to relationship, personal, it can be related to work relationship, it can be related to the way how you perform on your work, yes, or in the way how what type of skills do you use for your work, whatever is insecurity are, it will just appear out. So you need to be more clear on what is the root of it, and if you feel overstressed, you can invite specific specialists who can use support specifically for this aim.
Yeah, that is a beautiful of a sum up of what I said. And like just to remember that everybody is different. Everybody experiences things in a different way.
And why emotional detachment is often associated with burnout? How does it work? Why we feel emotionally detached when it starts?
Okay, so I don't think emotional detachment or exhaustion or the output that you're having is connected to choices that you make. When you are experiencing burnout, the entire system goes a little haywire. And in that process, the body and the mind goes into a protective state of being because you are now functioning on the last bit of fuel before you're going to collapse. You are so overworked, you're so overwhelmed, you're so stressed out, it's nonstop, your sleep is being affected, that your system is going. We have to ensure that somehow we are going to protect ourselves. So the mechanism of depersonalizing things, having apathy, is a physiological response to not being able to take in more information and content on a system that is already overloaded. And feeling exhausted and having no connection to feeling more things or emotionally connecting to people is a direct result of that combination that I described.
And how can we rest better? In the way of, should we have a vacation for 2 weeks? I don't know, and really like sleep and all the time, or it can be something not so great change. For example, I don't know, we should start meditating for 30 minutes, or I don't know, 1 hour, or should we do some, I don't know, sound bath, or what are types of rest can really help us to make this overwhelming feeling decrease, that we don't feel that so much happening, that we feel less things happening.
I love the ideas that you said. And for different people, I always call it regulation tools. What are the things in your life that makes you feel calm and grounded and happy? And to, as much as you would prioritize time for your loved ones and time for your work, to prioritize time for yourself in that level of importance, right? But what must be remembered that is often difficult is that when you're looking at work functions that causes burnout, the person will always feel, if I rest and I go home for 2 weeks and I shut things off, when I come back to work, the exact same thing, the exact same feeling, the exact same workload is going to be waiting for me when I get back. So, as important as resting is, it's really good to strategize and ask yourself, am I in the right fit for types of work that I'm doing? And sometimes people don't have a choice because we're not living in an economy where, everybody's on social welfare. And if you don't have a job, the state will take care of you. Like a lot of people don't have that choice and they are living hand to mouth and you've got to make ends meet. And even if you are in the high income bracket, generally your economics of life is matched to the quality and the standard of your earnings. So you would do anything but not compromise that quality or standard of your earnings. So when you're talking about strategy, it's always good to look at what are your options when it looks at what are the things that is causing me this particular burnout? What are my options that I have available to me? And if I know I want to do this job, who can I ask for support in my workplace or in the setting that I'm in to get the help that I need so that the work can be systematically more manageable and doable. And I'm not feeling overwhelmed and it doesn't feel like a never-ending story. So it must be that combined factor where when people leave their work, they can go, oh, I have everything under control. When I come back to work the next day, I'll get back to it then and everything will be okay. But when that feeling is not there, then the burnout goes in as an extension when you get home because you will rest, but you will never completely and entirely rest. And then your body will start responding in a very strange way when you have to go to work. You might have a little bit of anxiety then. You might not feel motivated. It might be difficult for you to get out of bed. And maybe you can think of, oh, I'm depressed, but that might not be depression. That could be a response of your body and your mind protecting you when you're going through the experience of burnout.
Uh, when you were talking about that, I thought about some opening and closing rituals, which maybe can be one of the regulative tool. Do you have any experience about this topic? I know that in for brain it's kind of important to start the things and then to finish the things, but very often we don't really finish the things, and then it happens as if we having a browser with a lot of windows open. So can you share some experience about this opening and closing things and how really to close them, not to, close them, but not close, to pretend that you closed?
Sure. So when I work with somebody, I like to work with strategies that are simple and doable. And I try not to use big words and huge acronyms. I just keep things simple. And I work with a digital planner. My favorite digital planner online is called Todoist. And Todoist allows you to track what you've got to do, how you got to do it. You can put links into the things that you've got to do. You can give yourself different steps, and you've got to give yourself a deadline and a time frame. What a lot of people don't have is an actual time block for when they are going to complete the work that they've got to do. And when it comes to motivation, so when you're looking at something like procrastination a lot of the times is associated with a behavioral response, but it's actually a protective brain mechanism. And the reason why a lot of the times people don't feel the motivation to get something started and to complete it, because the feeling of having the experience of doing work is not a very good feeling, or the clarity of sitting down at your desk and knowing exactly what are the first, second, and third steps you've got to do is not very clearly put together. And so you don't know how to start something. Your approaches to something is not very clear. And you're not working within a time block or in a time frame. So I always work with either body doubling strategies where I can work with someone online at the same time, or I can do a check-in call where I would say, it's now 2 p.m. Let's go through what it is that you've got to do. I'm going to give you 1 hour to do these 3 particular tasks, and then I'm going to call in again to see how far you've got. And that kind of level of accountability, some people love personal accountability. You can create personal accountability by working with the Pomodoro clock and working with a timer in your external environment. That kind of accountability gives something a little bit of a window for when you are going to actually complete the work that you set out done. And it's really important. When you are planning something, you have to prioritize too. Not everything is got the same level of importance. And if you prioritize, you can see on my day to day, I can do 2 or 3 functions where when I start something, I will complete it. Or if I'm not completing it, I can have a marker for how much I need to do for that day. A lot of the times, what people do is that they find it very difficult to be motivated to start something. And then when they eventually get started on something, they want to do it for 6 or 7 hours nonstop. And that puts a lot of pressure on the brain, specifically on our frontal cortex, which is all our executive skills. And that is going to affect your emotional regulation, how you plan, how you make decisions, your working memory. All of those things are going to be impacted. And then the next day, your brain is going to say, wow, whenever we work, it's so tiring because you didn't take your breaks enough times. You didn't structure the work, you didn't simplify the work, and you didn't take it in pieces from one thing to another and complete different sections at a time. You did it all in one go, putting a lot of pressure on your brain, and then your mind was like, oh, I don't want to go into this again. And then the next day, the cycle starts again. You find it difficult to get back into that motivation because you associate work with pressure and pain, and nobody wants to put themselves through that. So if you change your strategy of approaches, you will change your motivation and it will have an impact on how you complete the tasks you've got to do.
And in this case, we come to the topic that time management and project management, self-management is one of the reasons why we can have a burnout. Yes, that if you don't know how to prioritize, if you don't know how to structure your tasks and how to control them in the comfortable way, then you always come to it. And from my experience, being in management for years, I also noticed that it can be the similar problem for managers, because sometimes managers push themselves too hard and then they starting to apply this approach to their team. And then all the team is burnout because the manager himself is burnout, and like there's like this non-ending cycle. And then they just change the team from this one to another one, and the another one have the same, and there is no ending cycle of discomfort, and everyone hates this company. And then they call this corporate culture. So what I think that maybe people should think about that it's all kind of interconnected system, yes, and you can't really exclude how do you manage yourself from the thing how do you manage your team. In your experience, talking about I don't know burnout condition and working in the team, is it something like personal that we should not discuss? Maybe it's going too deep in private life of a person, or this is okay and we need to be more open because this is directly affects our management system. How would you, I don't know, maybe give some advice for leaders who are listening to us?
I think, again, every person is different and every context and political environment is different. And you've got to be mindful about cause, cost, consequences. I would say that, right? So why am I in the position that I'm in? Is it because I am not competent? Is it because I don't have the skills? Then I need to find the right skills and maybe change how I'm approaching my work and skill up, and things will make it easier. Is it because of my self-management? Is it because I am not good at keeping with time, at following a plan, at prioritizing my work, at being motivated to do my work? Is it my approaches to my executive skills that is the problem? Or am I competent and my executive skills are generally fine, like every single person, Yi, regardless if you are neurodiverse, neurotypical, have mental health disorders, have a completely healthy brain? Every single person has got executive functioning strengths and executive functioning challenges. Most people with a healthy, balanced mind and life, they tend to have fewer challenges than people that might not have a balanced and healthier mind. And so they can compensate their strengths for their challenges, and generally things are okay. But when you can identify that, whoa, everything seems like it's not going well. I can't make decisions. I don't have good memory. Everything is jumping all over the place. Then when you think about it, yes, your brain is struggling with your executive skills, but is it because of your workload? And is it unrealistic to put this much work on you? Or is it because of your skill set and you are not able to keep up with the workload that is provided, or you're not able to do the work that you've got to do? So you've got to be mindful about what is the cost of all of this? Is it my energy? Is it my life? Is it my well-being? What is the cause of it? And if I speak out and ask for help and support, what would the potential consequences be of that? I would always say that it's very healthy to cultivate personal relationships of people in your life outside of your professional experience. So, your family, your friends, and those people are your community that can help you with whatever you're going through. And it's really great if you can cultivate honest relationships with your personal connections. However, some people don't have that for whatever reasons that they are going through in their lives. And in that case, I would say, please reach out and find a good therapist or a good coach or a good mentor, someone that can support you and somebody that you can trust in confidence, where you can express the entirety of what you are feeling and what you are going through. And then from there, make the decision that what are the things that I need? And maybe the things that you need is not to tell somebody, hey, I'm going through burnout, but it's to actually step back and say, why am I going through this? And then say, what can I do to change the factors that is going to relieve the stress that I'm going through? And so you can sit down with your manager and say, look, this has been an unrealistic amount of workload that I've experienced. I have done my best. And I really, no matter how hard I try, no matter how much work that I'm doing, I really feel like work never comes to an end. I feel like everything is on me, and there's no realistic component in how I am dealing with what is on my plate. We need to come up with a different strategy where work can be taken off my plate. Either someone is going to be working with me, or we need to change the approaches of how I'm tackling one thing at a time and not being constantly bombarded with too many things that I need to address at the same time. I don't feel like this is going to be productive for me in terms of giving you the best output. And I don't want to get to a position where I lose my drive and my passion for work, because I love my job. I enjoy working with you. But at this point, if things don't change, I don't know how I'm going to continue working at this pace and rate and this way. So you are experiencing burnout. You know what you are experiencing. There's absolutely no reason to be ashamed of it. You can speak this to your family. You can speak this to your therapist. But when you are maybe in a work environment, you've got to strategize on how do I get the things I need so that the pressure of what I'm going through can be alleviated. And in that context, at times you might need to disclose, I'm experiencing burnout that's bringing upon all these symptoms. That is why I need to actually take a sabbatical of like a few weeks with no pressure that is added. Then you might have to disclose it. But if you can get the things that you need without disclosing things personal in the professional space that you are in, then that might be the best move for you at that time. So, depending on who you are and what you are going through, you have to evaluate the situation in its completion. And you have to get counsel from people that you can speak of or with about yourself in confidence. And through that, gain clarity to understand what is the best strategy and approach for you in your work environment.
Hmm. Thank you, very wise. I like that approach. It really help you to distinguish this thing, because sometimes, when we are burned out, we're like don't tell about our feelings, and we becoming more sensitive and more, then we just like call to our, I don't know, coworker and say, oh, I'm just so burnout. I like, well, yeah, but and what is next? Like, yeah, you kind of talk about this big topic, but can you talk about more concrete? Yes, what exactly should we to work together on to understand? Should we explore this topic, or should we try to reframe this topic? Yes, and this gives us more ability to control and influence the situation when we becoming more specific on what are the reasons of our condition. And here we were talking a lot about like person who is willing to do something, but very often we do burnout condition by ourselves. And I'm talking about some kind of overachievement and toxic overachievement. Especially maybe it can be based on some traumas from childhood or some, I don't know, fears that person have. Can you share this vision on how to distinguish the um, healthy ambition and toxic overachievement? How can it
Oh,
differently?
it's it's that scale, it goes to that window of tolerance. That scale is always different for different people. For me, I always like to look at the wholesomeness of a person's life. And what I mean by this is that your life can't only be about your work. If people make their life only about their work and they don't have time for anything else, themselves, their friendships, their family, their hobbies, then there is something that is a little bit lopsided within what you are giving your energy to. And sometimes people might feel like they've got nothing other than their work, or they've got all these achievements and these ambitions. And, maybe the people that make it to these millionaires and these high achievers, they make that sacrifice. And they gear in that way to say, this is my goal, and I'm not going to do anything until I achieve this goal. And it comes at the cost of relationships, of their mindset, of their body. Like, so many things comes at the cost of having that high level of ambition. But for that person, they might feel like it's worth it because I got to that level where I am happy with my achievements of how I've got to be here in my life, right? So if something is not bothering a person, then generally they won't seek support, or they won't seek a need to change things. Now, a very interesting thing, when you're looking at ambition and when you're looking at wanting the rank and wanting the money and wanting all of these things, the variable of success or wealth, there is something known as extrinsic motivation and validation. That means that I am only motivated by things outside of myself that is going to inspire me to do something, because the entire worth and value that I have of myself is dependent on how someone else defines me. So I have got no value. I'm not a nice person. I don't do anything well until somebody tells me that I am. So that power exists outside of yourself. And then people sometimes have, especially when you come from states of despair or when you come from poverty, people have an idea in their mind of, if I achieve this and it looks like that, I will never go back to that space in my life again. So there's this feeling of wanting to run away from scarcity and needing to survive, and you need to thrive because you never want to go back to an experience that you have. And that's okay if it gets you out of where you are going to, but you have to ask yourself again, what is the cost of my lifestyle and the choices that I'm making? Do I take care of my body? Am I sleeping well? And when I sleep, do I rest in my mind completely? Do I exercise regularly? And sometimes exercising is just a walk. Do I eat healthy enough? And then outside of my physical body and being, do I make enough time for myself? Do I do enough things for my own self-care? Do I replenish my own batteries? And then outside of that, do I have good, sincere relationships with people in my life outside of what I can be seen or what I can give in order for me to build relationships with people. People must be with you because they like you for who you are, not for what they can get from you. And so, if you're looking at the components of your life, from your physical life to your self-care to your relationships, and then you take your ambition and your work, your workload that you are taking on, you can start to get an indicator of, am I making good choices for my well-being in my life? And those are big questions that can help you understand the burnout that I'm having. Is it worth it? Can I do something else about it? Or when you're talking about an existential crisis, what is the point of all of this? What is the meaning of all of this? Why am I putting myself through all of this? So those are very good strategies to have for everybody, if you are suffering from burnout or not, for everybody to ask themselves those critical questions of, am I taking care of my well-being, my relationships, and do I have enough energy to give to my work?
Thank you so much. I think it was very nice podcast, and we covered, in my opinion, most important topics. And I hope our listeners now can have some break and think about it and maybe decide on some new strategies, new approaches towards themselves or towards their work environment. Because nowadays, burnout is becoming so widely spread, and it's not because it's normal for human, yes, in the way that we are like all need that to achieve success. But as I understand more and more, it's more about how we manage our own life, how we develop our emotional intelligence towards ourselves and toward others, yes. And I believe that if we want to live in a happier society, yes, we need to start from having energy to be happy, yes, because to be happy also need an energy to do that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Before we will end, maybe you can give like some short, small advice for a person who really deep in burnout, and while listening to this podcast, he understands that yes, it's about him, like just something simple, what he can do, where to start.
Sure. You can go onto my website and you can send me an email. My first consultation with anyone is for free. So we can always have an indicator of what you need and we can take it from there. So everybody is different and everyone's needs are different. And I can't generalize what somebody can do because people's experiences are always subjective to who and what they are. But I am always happy to meet you. And please reach out to me through my website. My email is there as well as my contact details. And I'm happy to see how I can support you if you are going through this. And to just remember, whatever your mental health challenges are, or whatever you are experiencing, including burnout, it's a normal experience of being a human being. You're not abnormal, you're not strange, you're not weak, there's nothing wrong with you, but always get the help that you need when you need it.
Thank you so much. So it was on our MGN podcast, and I'm Yi Meandr, and I'm hosting this podcast, inviting different healthcare professionals to tell their experience, to share some new methods that we use, because our modern life is very fast developing, and many of the things that you are struggling about, there is a whole science-based methodology-based how to support you, and there are specialists who can support you. And of course, it's important to exchange, yes, to grow. And today we had Taahirah Chothia, and Taahirah is a learning support therapist that specializes in executive functioning skill development. And this is really important topic for every of us, because we all want to be highly functional, highly executive functional. Yes. So thank you for your experience, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Yi, and I'm so happy to support you in whatever topics you would have in relation to my field. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.